I arrived at my daughter's wedding, carrying a keepsake from her late mother, a gift I had safeguarded for 17 years, as a promise I never forgot. But instead of walking her down the aisle, the groom looked at me with open contempt and said, "You don't belong here." I simply replied, "I understand." Then I turned and walked away. They thought I would disappear quietly, but all I needed was one phone call. And within days, the flawless mask he had so carefully built began to crack, and beneath the relentless ringing that followed his entire world came crashing down. Thank you so much for being here. Real quick, leave a comment below telling me where you're tuning in from. I'd love to know. Just so you're aware, this story blends some fictional details for storytelling and teaching purposes. Any resemblance to actual names or locations is unintentional, but the message that's valuable and worth your time. All right, back to the story. The velvet box in my jacket pocket weighed far more than it should have. I carried it from my house on Trad Street, through Charleston's winding roads, to the oak-lined entrance of Magnolia Plantation and Gardens. Afternoon sunlight filtered through Spanish moss hanging like curtains from ancient branches. Somewhere beyond the trees, a string quartet played something classical. Mozart, maybe Vivaldi, the kind of music Maggie would have named without hesitation. I never had her ear for composers, but I knew watches. The rose-gold Rolex Datejust inside that velvet box, worth nearly $18,000, had been Maggie's. She wore it every day until the aneurysm took her in 2008. 17 years. I'd kept it safe since waiting for the right moment to pass it to our daughter. Today was supposed to be that moment. I parked in the gravel lot and followed the wooden signs toward the ceremony site. White folding chairs lined the lawn before a flower-draped arbor. Magnolias, Maggie's favorite, bloomed despite the November chill. 68 degrees, unseasonably warm. Guests in pastel dresses and linen suits mingled near the pavilion, champagne glasses catching the light. I straightened my navy jacket and approached the check-in table. A young woman with a headset smiled up at me. Her name tag read, Chelsea. "Good afternoon. Name, please." "William Harrison I," said evenly. "Father of the bride." Her fingers moved across a tablet. She scrolled once, twice. Her smile faltered. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "William Harrison. Harrison. My daughter is Sarah Harrison." "Yes, of course I have Sarah." Her voice tightened. "But I don't see your name on the guest list." "Could it be under a different name?" "No," I said quietly. "There must be a mistake." She checked again, tablet printed backup list. When she looked up, something had changed in her eyes. Discomfort. Maybe pity. "Sir, I'm really sorry. Your name isn't here." "Check again." She did. Same result. Behind me, guests began to notice. A couple whispered. An older woman frowned in my direction. "Let me get the event coordinator," Chelsea said, touching her headset. "That won't be necessary." The voice was smooth and controlled. Derek Palmer stepped from the pavilion's side entrance, immaculate in a tuxedo that likely cost more than my mortgage. Hair slicked back, smile sharp. "My son-in-law, as of 2 hours ago." "Mr. Harrison," he said coolly. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm Sarah's father," I replied. "Where else would I be?" He glanced at Chelsea, then back at me. "We discussed this. Sarah and I both agreed it would be best if you didn't attend, given your recent behavior." "My behavior, the phone calls, the accusations, the investigator." He waved a dismissive hand. "The instability. We didn't want a scene, for Sarah's sake." The velvet box pressed against my ribs. 29 years. Every scraped knee, every school play after Maggie died, every college tuition payment, every Sunday shrimp and grits dinner on my porch, all of it collapsing into this moment. "I need to see Sarah. That's not going to happen." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't belong here, Mr. Harrison. I suggest you leave quietly, unless you'd prefer security." I looked past him, through the open French doors of the pavilion. There she was. Sarah stood in the bridal suite surrounded by bridesmaids in lavender. White lace framed her face. Her dark hair was pinned up the way Maggie used to wear hers. She laughed at something someone said, and then just briefly she glanced toward the entrance. Our eyes met. I waited. For recognition. For confusion. For her to walk out and correct the mistake. She looked away. Derek's hand landed on my shoulder. Not rough. Just firm. Time to go. I shrugged him off and walked toward the parking lot. Behind me, the quartet shifted into Pachelbel's canon. Sarah and I had danced to that at her high school graduation party, her feet on mine like when she was 6. I reached my car and sat beneath a sprawling oak. The velvet box rested in my palm. I had planned to give it to her at the reception. A private moment. Just us. Guests continued arriving, families laughing, a flower girl practicing her steps. No one looked at me. I was invisible, erased, but not powerless. I took out my phone and dialed Martin Caldwell, my attorney, my college roommate, the only person besides Sarah I had ever trusted completely. He answered immediately. "Will, how'd it go?" Through the windshield, I saw Derek greeting guests, smiling flawlessly. "Martin," I said quietly, "it's time. Execute the plan." Silence. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure." I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Magnolia Plantation blurred into white chairs and hanging moss. I wasn't driving away in defeat. I was driving toward war. The road home felt longer than 20 miles. I barely noticed the turn from Magnolia Plantation or the way the afternoon sun filtered through the oaks along Ashley River Road. My hands stayed fixed at 10 and 2 the way I'd taught Sarah when she got her learner's permit at 15. The velvet box rested on the passenger seat, now no longer hidden in my jacket pocket, but no less heavy. Halfway home, I passed the turnoff for MUSC Hospital, the Medical University of South Carolina, where my life split cleanly into before and after. November 14th, 2008, a Friday. Maggie had been loading the dishwasher. I was at the office reviewing blueprints when my phone rang. Sarah's voice, 12 years old, and shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "Dad, Mom fell down and she won't wake up. I made it home in 8 minutes." The ambulance was already there. Maggie lay unconscious on the kitchen floor, a coffee mug still clutched in her hand. Sarah sat on the stairs, knees pulled tight to her chest, watching paramedics surround her mother. At MUSC, a doctor with kind eyes and a grim mouth said words like cerebral aneurysm and catastrophic bleeding. We were allowed into the ICU for 10 minutes. Maggie was pale against white sheets, tubes threaded into her arms, machines beeping in a rhythm that would echo in my nightmares for months. She was barely awake. Sarah held my hand on one side of the bed. I held Maggie's on the other. Her wedding ring, simple gold, chosen in 1988, caught the fluorescent light. "Will," she whispered. "Promise me. Anything." I was crying. I didn't care. "Promise you'll give her everything. Every dream. Every chance I won't be here to give her." "I promise," I said. "I swear it, Mags." She squeezed my hand, then looked at Sarah, our terrified 12-year-old, and smiled. "I love you, baby girl." "Don't go, Mom," Sarah sobbed. But Maggie was already fading. The machines shrieked. Nurses rushed in. We were ushered into the hallway where Sarah collapsed against me, and I held her while the world ended. Margaret Harrison died at 48. No warning, no time to prepare. That promise became the blueprint for the next 17 years of my life. I became both father and mother. Some days I managed, some days I failed. But I kept showing up. In 2009, I learned to braid Sarah's hair. The first attempt looked like a bird's nest. By the 10th, I could manage a French braid that impressed other parents. She never complained while I fumbled with bobby pins and elastic bands. She'd sit on the bathroom counter legs, swinging, trusting me to learn. In 2012, she applied to the Charleston School of the Arts. Her portfolio required professional supplies, expensive ones. I sold Maggie's vintage Cadillac, the car I'd never driven after she died. It paid for easels, oil paints, canvases, and weekend tuition. In 2015, Sarah changed course from art to marketing. I had secretly hoped she might follow me into architecture. She'd loved visiting job sites as a child, asking about foundations and load-bearing walls. But marketing made her happy, so I supported it. No lectures, no disappointment, just pride. College of Charleston, 2016 to 2020. Tuition, housing, textbooks, groceries, late-night pizza during finals. I took extra consulting work, renovations, additions, anything that paid. The total cost reached just over $84,000. I never told her the number. She didn't need that burden, and every Sunday without fail she came home. 1 o'clock sharp, she'd walk through the door of our house on Trad Street. We'd cook shrimp and grits, Maggie's Low Country recipe. I peeled the shrimp. Sarah stirred the pot, adding butter and cheese until it was rich and creamy. We'd sit on the back porch, plates on our laps, and talk about her classes, her friends, her plans. She always left by 5, always hugged me at the door, always said, "Love you, Dad." For 17 years, that was our rhythm, our foundation, until Derek. I pulled into the driveway at 142 Trad Street and turned off the engine. The house looked the same, blue shutters, white trim, the porch swing Maggie and I hung in 1995. But everything felt altered. I picked up the velvet box and opened it. Maggie's Rolex gleamed in the fading light. Her grandmother's watch passed down through 3 generations, now waiting for Sarah. On our 20th anniversary in 2006, she'd laughed over champagne. One day this goes to Sarah, or whoever she marries, whoever joins this crazy family. I had planned to give it to Sarah today at the reception. A quiet moment between us. Your mother wanted you to have this. She'd be proud. Now it rested in my palm, cold and unused. I had kept my promise. I gave Sarah love, education, stability, every opportunity Maggie wouldn't live to provide. I braided her hair, sold the car, paid the tuition, showed up every Sunday. I gave her everything. But somewhere between the shrimp and grits dinners and the graduation ceremonies, between the bedtime talks and the porch conversations, I lost her. Not to time, not to adulthood, to him. I can pinpoint the exact moment our lives changed. May 14th, 2024. Sarah called, her voice bright with something I hadn't heard in months. "Dad, I'm bringing someone to dinner tomorrow. Someone special." I spent the next afternoon preparing a low-country boil, shrimp, sausage, corn, potatoes in a spicy broth. Maggie's recipe. The kind of meal you eat with your hands around a newspaper-covered table. The kind that says family. Sarah arrived at 6:30 with a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Derek Palmer. Tall, maybe 6'2", with slicked-back dark hair and a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. His charcoal suit probably cost more than most people's rent. Italian leather shoes, polished to a shine. Except I noticed the scuffs along the heels. To Mr. Harrison, his handshake was firm, almost too firm. "Derek Palmer, I've heard so much about you." He glanced around my foyer, the exposed brick, the heart pine floors, the antique chandelier Maggie and I had salvaged decades ago. "This place has real old-fashioned charm." Old-fashioned. The phrase landed with a faint edge. Over dinner, Derek dominated conversation. Real estate development, he said. High-end residential projects. He name-dropped Charleston families I vaguely recognized and mentioned a 7-figure deal closing soon. I asked about his company. What projects had he completed? Derek smiled and pivoted. Confidentiality agreements. Investors get nervous if details leak. Fair enough, but vague. I mentioned a renovation project I'd worked on downtown. Sarah used to visit the site on weekends wearing a plastic hard hat. Derek interrupted. "That's sweet, Mr. Harrison. But let's focus on the future, not the past, right, Sar?" Sar, diminutive, possessive. Later, when I suggested grabbing dessert on King Street, Derek patted his pockets. "Would you believe I forgot my wallet, Sarah? You mind?" She paid. Without hesitation. I noticed other things too. His watch looked like a Rolex Submariner black face oyster bracelet crown logo. But I knew watches. Maggie's Rolex was real. This wasn't. The second hand ticked instead of sweeping. A decent fake. And when Derek gestured broadly, telling some story about impressing investors, I saw his shoe soles. Worn. Scuffed. Months of use. A man in expensive clothes he couldn't afford to replace. When I mentioned my architecture firm, Derek's tone shifted. Architecture, huh? Must have been a different world back in your day. I let it go. By July, Derek had moved into Sarah's apartment on Wentworth Street. She invited me for dinner. I brought a gift, a first edition Palladio, a book about architecture Sarah had loved as a child. Derek flipped through it and set it aside. "Sar, does your dad know you're not into this stuff anymore?" Sarah flushed. "Dad, it's beautiful. Thank you." But she didn't open it again. Derek also mentioned with apparent concern that Trad Street seemed pretty isolated for an older guy. The subtext was clear. You're old. Alone. Vulnerable. I was 67. I didn't need help from a 31-year-old wearing a fake Rolex. Over those months, I watched Sarah change. She deferred to Derek's opinions, apologized for things that didn't need apologies, wrong wine, laughing too loud. She checked her phone constantly, like waiting for permission. Then on January 15th, I learned my daughter was engaged. Not from her, from Facebook. The notification popped up while I reviewed invoices. A photo, Peninsula Grill candlelit Sarah's left hand, showing a diamond ring. Derek's arm around her smile, perfect. The caption read, "She said yes. Building our future together in Charleston." 47 comments within an hour. Friends, co-workers, strangers offering congratulations. My name wasn't tagged. I called. She answered on the fourth ring, breathless. "Dad, did you see?" I forced warmth. "Congratulations, sweetheart. When did this happen?" "Yeah, tonight Derek proposed at Waterfront Park during sunset." "Are you happy?" "So happy, Dad." Derek's voice in the background. "Sar, we've got reservations. I have to go. We're celebrating. I'll call you tomorrow." She didn't. I sat in my study that night staring at the post. The fake Rolex. The scuffed shoes. The dismissive comments about my career, my home, my memories. The way Sarah had shrunk quieter, smaller, always checking her phone. I told myself I was being paranoid. A protective father who couldn't let go, but every instinct I'd had was right. The condescension masked as concern. The vague answers about work. The way he'd rewritten Sarah's interests, her past, her relationship with me. The nickname that made her sound like a child. I'd seen it all from that first dinner, and I'd ignored it, because I didn't want to be the overbearing father, because I thought she'd resent me, because I believed she'd see through him eventually. I was wrong. Derek hadn't just entered our lives that May evening. He'd started erasing me. Erosion doesn't announce itself. It happens slowly, water on stone, Sunday after Sunday. For 17 years since Maggie died, Sarah had come home for dinner every Sunday at 1 o'clock. We'd cook shrimp and grits together, her stirring the pot while I peeled the shrimp. Then we'd sit on the back porch with plates balanced on our laps and talk for hours. About her week, her work, her dreams. It was the rhythm that held us together after we lost Maggie. The first cancellation came mid-July, 2 months after I met Derek. A text, "Dad, so sorry. Derek booked us a couple's brunch thing." Rain check. I texted back, "No problem. Next week." Next week, another text. Derek surprised me with a weekend trip to Savannah. "I'll make it up to you." The third Sunday, she didn't mention dinner at all. I had to text her. "Still on for today?" Her reply came an hour later. "Dad, Derek thinks we should create our own traditions as a couple. Maybe we can do dinner every other week instead." Every other week became once a month. Then nothing. By September, I stopped asking. I'd still cook on Sundays. Old habits. I'd set one place at the table instead of two, eat alone, then sit on the porch with my coffee and watch the light fade through the oak trees. The silence felt heavier each week, louder somehow than 17 years of conversation had ever been. I told myself it was natural. She was building a life with Derek. This was what letting go looked like, but it didn't feel like letting go. It felt like being erased. In November, I invited them both to Thanksgiving at my house. I'd been planning the menu for weeks, low-country-style turkey with oyster dressing, Maggie's recipe, the kind of meal that takes all day and fills the house with warmth. Sarah called to decline. Her voice was apologetic, rushed. "Derek's grandmother in Atlanta is really sick, Dad. We need to be there for her." "Of course." I kept my voice steady. "Tell her I hope she feels better." "Thanks, love you." "Love you too, sweetheart." I spent Thanksgiving alone. Turkey breast for one. Instant stuffing. I ate in front of the television and tried not to think about the empty chairs. 3 days later, Vincent Hughes stopped by my office. Vincent and I had been business partners for 20 years. He ran the construction side of our projects. I handled design. He was blunt, practical, the kind of friend who told you the truth, even when it stung. "Well, I saw Sarah and that boyfriend of hers at Hall's Chop House on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. Figured you all had some kind of family disagreement." I set down my coffee. "What?" "They were at a table near the window. Looked like they were celebrating something." He paused. "You okay?" I wasn't. There was no sick grandmother. Derek had lied. And Sarah, my Sarah, who'd never been good at lying, who used to confess to breaking things before I even noticed they were broken, had gone along with it. I called her that night. It went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. December brought a different kind of hurt. The American Institute of Architects South Carolina chapter awarded me their Lifetime Achievement Award. 40 years of work distilled into a plaque and a 5-minute speech at the Charleston Gaillard Center. Over 200 people attended, colleagues, former clients, friends I'd known since college. I invited Sarah 6 weeks in advance. She promised she'd be there. The night of the ceremony, I scanned the audience from backstage. Rows of familiar faces. Empty seat in the 3rd row where I'd reserved her spot. When they called my name, I walked across the stage and accepted the award. I gave my speech, thanked my mentors, my team, the city that had given me a career. At the end, I added, "And to my daughter Sarah, who I hope is proud." The applause felt hollow. Afterward, as I shook hands and posed for photographs, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, "Dad. I'm so sorry. Derek wasn't feeling well, and I had to stay home with him. Congrats on the award." I stepped into the hallway and called her. Derek answered. "Mr. Harrison, hey. Sarah's in the shower right now. She feels terrible about missing tonight. Can she call me when she's out?" "Absolutely, I'll let her know." She never called. Christmas was the final crack. Sarah came by on the 25th. 30 minutes. She brought a gift card to a bookstore, generic, impersonal, the kind of thing you give a coworker. Derek waited in the car. He didn't want to intrude on family time, she said. We sat in the living room. She checked her phone every 2 minutes. I gave her a framed photograph I'd found in a box in the attic, Sarah and Maggie at Folly Beach, summer of 2006. Sarah was 10, gap-toothed and sunburned, Maggie's arm around her shoulders. They were both laughing at something I'd said behind the camera. "This is beautiful, Dad, thank you." She set it on the coffee table without looking at it. 29 minutes and her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. "I should get going. Derek's waiting." I walked her to the door, hugged her. She felt smaller than I remembered. I stood on the porch and watched her car disappear down Trad Street. Inside, the framed photograph sat where she'd left it, untouched, forgotten. I'd become a stranger in my own daughter's life. Each canceled Sunday, each lie about sick grandmothers and surprise trips, each missed milestone. They were small things individually, easy to rationalize, easy to forgive, but together they were something else. I didn't realize I was witnessing a deliberate dismantling. 2 weeks after I learned about the engagement on Facebook, Sarah invited me to dinner. Dad, come over Friday night. Want to celebrate properly. 7 p.m. I bought a decent bottle of champagne, not extravagant, and wrapped the first edition Palladio I'd been saving. A 1738 book on classical architecture passed down from my grandfather to me. I'd always imagined giving it to Sarah when she started a family. I arrived at her Wentworth Street apartment at 7 sharp. Derek opened the door, crisp, button-down, practiced smile. "Mr. Harrison, come in." Sarah hurried out from the kitchen, flushed. The table was set for 5. 2 strangers, well-dressed, polished, in their 60s, rose from the couch. "Dad, these are Derek's parents. Linda and Robert Palmer." I shook their hands. Linda's grip was limp. Robert's was firm but impersonal, like a networking handshake. "We've heard so much about you," Linda said pleasantly. Dinner was takeout from High Cotton Shrimp and grits, ironically, though not Maggie's recipe. Derek had plated it to look homemade, but I saw the restaurant bag near the trash. "I tried to keep things warm." "Derek, did you ask for my blessing before you proposed?" He laughed lightly. "Mr. Harrison, that's a bit old-fashioned. Don't you think Sarah's her own woman? We decided together." Sarah flushed. "Dad, it's 2025. People don't really do that anymore." "Of course," I said evenly. "I'm just happy you're happy." The conversation shifted to wedding plans. I asked about the venue, the date. Sarah deferred every question to Derek. "He's handling most of it," she said. "November," Derek added. Magnolia Plantation. 200 guests. I set down my fork. "That's wonderful. I'd like to contribute. I've been saving. For years, I'd put aside $50,000 from consulting work and careful investments. It was meant for her wedding. Or a house. Whatever she needed." Derek waved a hand. "We've got it covered, Mr. Harrison." "No need. I insist. I want to be part of this." His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "We appreciate that. But Sarah and I want this to be our day. We're handling it ourselves. You understand? Our day." It felt like a door closing. I looked at Sarah, waiting for her to say something, to include me, to remind him I was her father. She didn't. Robert cleared his throat. "Derek's always been very responsible with money." Linda smiled. "We're just thrilled for them." Their words felt rehearsed, polished. But I couldn't quite name why. I handed Sarah the wrapped book. She opened it carefully, her face lighting up. "Dad, this is beautiful." Derek glanced at it. "Very generous, Mr. Harrison. Though I'm not sure where we'd put it. Our place is pretty minimalist." Sarah set it aside, unopened, beyond the title page. After dinner, I stepped onto the small balcony for air. The February night was cool. Derek followed with a cigar. "Cigar. No thanks." He leaned against the railing. "Sarah's lucky to have you. I know this transition isn't easy." Transition. Like I was being phased out. "The ring's beautiful," I said. "Where'd you get it?" "Krogan's Jewel Box. King Street. Only the best for my girl." I nodded. Maggie and I had bought her Rolex there years ago. But something about Sarah's ring had bothered me since I saw the engagement photo. The setting looked too perfect, too pristine, as if it hadn't settled against skin. A week later, I found myself walking past Krogan's and stepped inside. A boutique manager greeted me. Her name tag read, "Diana Sutton." "Can I help you?" "My daughter just got engaged," I said. "Beautiful diamond ring. Platinum setting." "Congratulations," she smiled. "Did she get it here?" "I believe so. We do custom work," she said. "We also offer a lease program for proposals. Some couples prefer it for photos, $500 a month. They return it after, then purchase or resize a permanent ring." I kept my face neutral. "That's practical. It's popular with younger clients." I thanked her and left. $500 a month. Leased. Returned after photos. Derek's ring wasn't permanent. It was a prop. I didn't confront him. I didn't tell Sarah. What would I say? "Your fiancé leased your engagement ring. She'd think I was trying to undermine her happiness. She would choose him." I drove home thinking about the Palladio book sitting unopened on her side table. That night, she texted, "Thanks for coming tonight, Dad. Love you." I replied, "Love you too, sweetheart." But the distance inside those words felt vast. "We want this to be our day. You understand?" I did understand. Every decision made without me. Every question Sarah redirected to Derek. Every detail curated, controlled. My role shrinking from father to guest. I understood perfectly. I just didn't realize yet how thoroughly I was being erased. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in June, the kind of call that makes your blood run cold. I was in my study at home, reviewing blueprints for a small consulting project, a residential addition in Mount Pleasant, when my phone rang. The name on the screen stopped me mid-thought. Howard Sterling, First National Bank. Howard and I had known each other since college. We'd played intramural basketball together, pulled all-nighters before exams, stayed friends through 40 years of life in Charleston. He managed the downtown branch now, and Sarah had opened her first savings account there when she turned 16. "Will," he said when I answered. No greeting, no small talk. "I need you to come in as soon as possible. It's urgent. It's about Sarah." My stomach dropped. "Is she okay?" "She's fine, physically. But there's something you need to see." "How soon can you get here?" 20 minutes. I made it in 15. Howard's office was on the second floor of the old banking building on Meeting Street. The one with the marble columns and brass fixtures that had been there since the 20s. He closed the door behind me and gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Well, I'm going to show you something, and I need you to stay calm." He slid a stack of papers across the desk. A loan application. Home equity line of credit. $425,000. The property listed was Sarah's apartment on Wentworth Street, the one I'd helped her buy when she graduated from College of Charleston in 2020. A down payment gift, the kind of thing a father does when he's planned and saved for years. The applicant's name, Sarah Harrison. The signature at the bottom, neat looping, confident. But wrong. Our loan officer flagged this 2 weeks ago, Howard said quietly. The applicant, supposedly Sarah, came in to apply for the HELOC. She seemed nervous, rushed, kept checking her phone. The officer noted it in the file. "Sarah wouldn't take out a loan without telling me." "I know. That's why I ran a handwriting comparison." Howard pulled out another sheet, a signature card from Sarah's savings account, the one she'd signed at 16. He laid it next to the loan application. They didn't match. The savings account signature was rounded, almost childish the way Sarah had written back then. The loan signature was sharper, more controlled. Similar enough to pass a casual glance, but not the same hand. The co-signer listed here is Derek Palmer," Howard continued. "But he has no ownership stake in the property. It's Sarah's apartment, solely in her name." I stared at the papers, my vision narrowing. "You're saying Derek forged her signature?" Howard nodded. "I can't prove intent without a formal investigation. But yes, that's what it looks like." The loan was denied. Our officer's notes raised enough red flags. But Will, if he tried this once, he didn't need to finish the sentence. I left the bank and drove straight to Martin Caldwell's office. Martin and I had been roommates at Clemson in the 70s. He'd gone to law school. I'd gone into architecture. But we'd stayed close. He'd handled Maggie's estate after she died. He'd reviewed contracts for my firm. And when I'd called him from Magnolia Plantation back in November, telling him to execute the plan, he'd known exactly what I meant. His office was in a renovated historic building on Broad Street, all exposed brick and tall windows. He poured us both coffee and listened while I explained. When I finished, Martin's jaw was tight. He pulled a legal pad toward him and started writing. "First, you file a police report. Attempted fraud. Charleston PD will open a case. Will that protect Sarah? It creates a paper trail. If Derek tries again, there's documentation." But Martin set down his pen. "You need to understand something. If you go to Sarah with this right now, Derek will twist it. He'll say you're trying to sabotage their wedding because you're jealous. Because you can't let go. And Sarah will believe him. The truth of that landed like a punch. What do I do? We build a case. Airtight. Irrefutable. Something Derek can't talk his way out of. Martin opened his laptop. Let me run a background check. Full public records search. It took 20 minutes. When Martin turned the screen toward me, I felt the air leave the room. Derek Palmer, Jr. Born 1993, Atlanta, Georgia. Bankruptcy filing 2021, Fulton County, Georgia. Total debt $890,000. A failed real estate LLC. Creditors unpaid. Personal credit cards maxed. Gambling debts. $265,000 owed across 3 casinos, one in Atlanta, one in Las Vegas, one in Biloxi, Mississippi. Professional license Georgia real estate suspended in 2022. Reason fraudulent misrepresentation and failure to disclose conflicts of interest. 4 limited liability companies registered between 2018 and 2022. All dissolved. All with outstanding debts. And then at the bottom of the search results, a restraining order. Filed in 2021, Seattle, Washington. Petitioner Andrea Nichols. Martin clicked the link. The court document loaded. I read it twice. Andrea Nichols, 32 years old at the time, alleged that Derek Palmer had defrauded her of $80,000, that he'd borrowed money under the pretense of a real estate investment, then disappeared, that he'd isolated her from her family, made her distrust her own judgment, controlled her finances. The language in the petition was clinical, legal. But one sentence stood out handwritten in the margins as a personal note to the judge. He isolated me from my family, made me doubt myself, then drained my savings. I stared at those words. Isolated me from my family. The Sunday dinners that stopped. The Thanksgiving lie. The award ceremony Sarah missed. The 30-minute Christmas visit. Made me doubt myself. Sarah apologizing for things that didn't need apologies. Checking her phone constantly. Deferring to Derek's opinions. Drained my savings. $425,000. Forged signature. Sarah's apartment as collateral. It was all there. The entire pattern. Laid out in black and white. Martin printed the document and handed it to me. Well, this guy's done this before. He'll do it again. We need to move fast. I need to tell Sarah. Not yet. Martin's voice was firm. She's already under his influence. You show her this now and Derek will convince her it's fake. That you hired someone to fabricate records. That you're obsessed with ruining her happiness. So what do I do? We hire a private investigator. Someone who can dig deeper than public records. Find out if there are other victims, other debts. Build a file so comprehensive that Derek can't deny it. Then when we have everything, we go to Sarah. Together. With proof he can't talk his way out of. I sat in my study that night long after midnight, surrounded by papers. The forged loan application. Martin's background check. Andrea Nichols's restraining order. In the ICU 17 years ago. Maggie made me promise to protect Sarah. Now I understood what that promise truly demanded, and I couldn't warn her. Because Derek had already made sure she wouldn't believe me. I'd spent 40 years designing buildings. Blueprints, load calculations, foundation work, systematic, methodical. Nothing left to chance. Now I'd designed Derek Palmer's downfall. I didn't plan to confront Derek. Martin had advised against it. Let me hire the investigator, he'd said after I'd left his office in June. We'll build an airtight case. When we have everything, we'll go to Sarah together. With proof Derek can't deny. But some decisions aren't about strategy. They're about conscience. If I was going to destroy this man, and I needed to give him one chance to walk away. One opportunity to do the right thing. Not for his sake. For mine. I texted him on a Wednesday morning. We need to talk. Man to man. Collective Coffee, King Street, 10 a.m. Thursday. His reply came 30 seconds later. Sure thing, Mr. H. See you there. That Mr. H, grated, casual, familiar, like we were friends. I arrived at Collective 15 minutes early. The coffee shop sat on a busy stretch of King Street, wedged between a boutique and a gallery. I ordered a black coffee and chose a table on the outdoor patio public enough that Derek couldn't make a scene private enough that we could talk. July in Charleston meant heat. Even at 10 in the morning, the temperature was climbing toward 82 degrees. Humid. The kind of day where your shirt stuck to your back before you'd walked a block. Derek arrived 10 minutes late. He wore sunglasses, expensive, mirrored, and a pale blue polo that looked like it cost more than my electric bill. He carried an iced latte condensation already dripping down the plastic cup. He slid into the chair across from me and smiled. "What's up, Mr. H. Sarah? Okay." The concern was performative, practiced. "Miss Sarah's fine. This is about you." Derek spread his hands, still smiling. "I'm an open book." I pulled the manila folder from my bag and slid it across the table. Derek glanced at it, but didn't open it. "What's this?" "Open it!" He did, slowly, flipping through the pages with the same casual detachment he'd shown at every dinner, every conversation, every moment I'd tried to connect with him over the past year. The forged loan application, Howard Sterling's handwriting analysis, the bankruptcy filing from Georgia, $890,000 in debt. The casino collection notices $265,000 owed across 3 states. The suspended real estate license, Andrea Nichols's restraining order from Seattle. I let him look. Then I spoke. "I know who you are, Derek. Or should I say Derek Palmer Jr. I know about the bankruptcy, the gambling, Andrea Nichols, the forged loan application you tried to run through First National, using my daughter's signature." Derek set the papers down. His smile didn't falter. "Wow." He leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "You really went full private detective on me, huh?" He laughed. Not nervously, not defensively. Just amused. "Mr. Harrison, this is sad. You hired someone to dig up my past because you can't handle Sarah having a life without you. You forged her signature to steal $425,000. That was a misunderstanding." His tone was smooth, unbothered. "The loan officer made a mistake. The whole thing was withdrawn. Because the bank caught you." Derek shrugged. He picked up his iced latte and took a long sip, looking at me over the rim of the cup like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Okay," he said finally. "Let's say hypothetically any of this is true. What are you going to do to Sarah?" He laughed again. "She won't believe you. She'll think you're sabotaging us because you're jealous, because you can't let her go." I kept my voice level. "I'm giving you a chance, Derek. Break off the engagement. Walk away. I won't press charges. I won't tell Sarah about the forgery or Andrea or any of this. Just leave." The smile vanished. Derek set down his cup. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and slowly removed his sunglasses. His eyes were cold, flat. The charm was gone. "You really don't get it, do you?" His voice was different now. Lower, deliberate. "When Sarah is mine now. She stopped needing you months ago. She doesn't want your approval, your money, or your outdated values. She wants me. She's my daughter. She's my fiancée." Derek's tone hardened. "And after we're married, she'll be my wife. Legally, financially, emotionally, mine. You'll be the old man she has to visit out of obligation twice a year. If that." I felt my pulse quicken. "If you think I'll let you destroy her life—" "What are you going to do, old man?" Derek interrupted. "Sue me. Call the cops. Show Sarah these papers." He tapped the folder with one finger. "She'll pick me, every time. You know why, because I give her something you never could. Freedom. From your suffocating, pathetic neediness." He stood, tossed his sunglasses onto the table. Then he leaned down close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive, cloying. His voice dropped to a whisper, low enough that the couple at the next table couldn't hear. "Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Harrison. You're going to stay out of our lives. You're going to smile at the wedding if we decide to invite you. And eventually, you're going to die alone in that big, empty house on Trad Street, wondering where you went wrong." He straightened, picked up the manila folder, and tore it in half. The documents fluttered onto the table like confetti. Torn. Ruined. "See you at the wedding," Derek said. He slid his sunglasses back on and walked away. I sat there frozen while Charleston moved around me. Tourists strolled past with shopping bags. A college kid on a bike wove through traffic. The barista inside called out an order. "Iced caramel macchiato for Jessica." The torn papers sat on the table in front of me. Evidence. Proof. Ripped apart like they meant nothing. But I had copies. I'd made 3 sets before I'd even left the house. I'd given Derek a chance to walk away. A chance to do the right thing. To disappear quietly and leave Sarah alone. He'd chosen war instead. So be it. Derek didn't waste time. Within 2 weeks of our coffee shop confrontation, the first crack appeared in my professional reputation, a foundation I'd spent 40 years building. The call came from a potential client, a couple referred by an old colleague who wanted to add a sunroom to their Mount Pleasant home. Simple project. The kind I could design in my sleep. Mr. Harrison, we've decided to go in a different direction," the wife said, her voice apologetic. "We read some reviews online and, well, we're just going to explore other options." I thanked her and hung up. Then I opened my laptop and searched for my firm, Harrison Architecture, Charleston, South Carolina. The listing popped up immediately. For over a decade, it had carried a 5-star rating. 23 reviews, all glowing. Clients I'd worked with since the 90s, people who trusted me with their homes, their budgets, their dreams. Now it showed 3.2 stars, 7 new reviews, all 1 star, all posted within the past week. I clicked on the first one, unreliable and erratic. Missed multiple deadlines. Would not recommend. I'd never missed a deadline in 40 years. The second review was outdated designs, refused to listen to modern input, seemed stuck in the past. Third, he seemed confused and forgetful during our consultations. Possibly dealing with cognitive issues, I felt uncomfortable moving forward. Fourth, unprofessional and hostile when questioned about his work. Not worth the hassle. Every review was anonymous. Fake names, generic profiles with no photos. But the damage was real. I took screenshots, sent them to Martin Caldwell. Then I tried to report the reviews to Google. The automated system required proof of fraud documentation, legal filings, evidence that could take weeks to compile. By then, the damage would be done. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, and understood. Derek wasn't just attacking me. He was attacking my livelihood, my credibility, the professional reputation that had sustained me and Sarah for decades. 3 days later, Vincent Hughes called. Vincent ran the construction side of our partnership. We'd worked together for 20 years. He was blunt, practical, the kind of friend who'd tell you when you had spinach in your teeth or when a project was headed south. His voice was tight when I answered. "Will, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me." "Of course. I got a call this morning. A man. Wouldn't give his name. He asked if I was aware of your recent behavioral issues. Said he was concerned for your well-being. Suggested I consider stepping back from our partnership." My stomach dropped. "What did you say? I told him to go to hell." Vincent paused. "But Will, what the hell is going on? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, it's Derek. Sarah's fiancé." "Yes," Vincent swore, colorfully. "That son of a..." He stopped himself. "What are you going to do?" "Document everything. Martin's building a legal case. You need me to testify, write a statement, anything. I'll let you know. Thank you, Vincent. You've got my back, Will. Always. I hung up, but the call left me shaken. Derek wasn't just spreading lies online. He was contacting my business partners, my colleagues, people I'd worked with for decades, trying to isolate me, trying to convince them I was unstable. 2 weeks later, I received certified mail. The return address was the South Carolina Board of Architectural Examiners. My hands were steady as I opened it, but my pulse wasn't. It was a formal notice. Someone had filed a complaint against me. The complainant was anonymous. The allegations were vague that I had engaged in unethical conduct by harassing a client's family member and demonstrating erratic behavior inconsistent with professional standards. There were no specifics, no dates, no incidents, no evidence, but it required a response, written within 30 days. I picked up the phone and called Roger Stevenson. Roger chaired the board. We'd known each other for 20 years through the American Institute of Architects. He'd attended my award ceremony last December, the one Sarah had missed. "Will," he said when he answered. His tone was formal, cautious. "I assume you're calling about the complaint." "I am. I can't discuss the details of an active investigation. You understand?" "And I do. But Roger, off the record, what the hell is this?" A pause. Then quieter. "Between us, it's strange. No specifics, no documentation, just vague accusations. I'd advise you to respond thoroughly. Provide character references. Make it clear this is baseless." "Do you believe it's baseless?" "Well, I've known you for 2 decades. I watched you build your firm from nothing. I've never seen you behave unethically or erratically." Another pause. "But I'm not the only person on this board. And an anonymous complaint still requires due process." I thanked him and hung up. I sat at my desk in my study, staring at the letter. Derek had done this. Filed a complaint he knew was false. Used phrases like harassing a client's family member, referring to himself to Sarah to make me sound dangerous. He was building a narrative, a story where I was the villain, the unstable, controlling father who couldn't accept that his daughter had moved on. If Sarah heard about this, and she'd believe it. She'd think I was falling apart, losing my grip on reality. And when I tried to warn her about Derek's past, about the forgery and the bankruptcy, and Andrea Nichols, she'd dismiss it as the paranoid ramblings of a man in decline. I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. A point-by-point rebuttal. 40 years of clean professional conduct. Letters of recommendation from colleagues. Testimonials from clients. Then I called Martin. "Derek's escalating," I said. "We need to move faster." "Agreed. I've got the investigator digging into Derek's associates, trying to find more victims, more restraining orders, anything that proves a pattern." "How long?" "A few weeks, maybe less. The wedding's in 5 weeks." "I know." Martin's voice was grim. "We'll have something by then, I promise." I hung up. Alone in my study, I stared at the certified letter, the fake Google reviews, the notes from Vincent's call. Derek wasn't just trying to steal Sarah. He was trying to erase me, my reputation, my credibility, my sanity in her eyes. I could fight back publicly, defend myself. Issue statements, hire a PR firm, flood the internet with rebuttals. But that's what Derek wanted. An emotional, desperate old man. Someone Sarah would pity. Someone she'd dismiss. So I did what I'd always done best. I designed a strategy, brick by brick. The first brick in my strategy was hiring someone who specialized in uncovering truths people wanted buried. Martin Caldwell knew a private investigator. A good one. "His name's Aaron Briggs," Martin said when I met him at his office on Broad Street. "Former Charleston PD, 15 years on the force before he went private. He's thorough, discreet, and he doesn't quit until he has answers." Aaron arrived 20 minutes later. Mid-40s gray hair, cropped short, wearing a button-down shirt and khakis. He had the calm, assessing demeanor of someone who'd spent years interviewing suspects and witnesses. He shook my hand, sat down, and pulled out a notebook. "Mr. Caldwell gave me the basics," he said. "But I need everything you've got. Names, dates, addresses, social media profiles, photos. Anything that helps me build a timeline." I slid a folder across the table. Inside, printouts of Derek's LinkedIn profile, his Facebook posts, Instagram photos where Sarah had tagged him, copies of the forged loan application Howard Sterling had flagged, the bankruptcy filing Martin had uncovered, Andrea Nichols's restraining order from Seattle. Aaron flipped through the pages, nodding occasionally. "This is a good start. I'll run a full background check, criminal records, civil filings, employment history, known associates. If there are other victims, I'll find them." "Yo, how long?" "Not 2 weeks. Maybe less if I catch a break. And your fee, $200 an hour. I'll need a $5,000 retainer to start." I wrote the check without hesitation. 2 weeks later, Aaron delivered his report. It was 47 pages long. Martin and I sat in his office, the document spread across the conference table, and read through it together. Slowly, methodically. What we found was worse than I'd imagined. Derek Palmer, Jr. Born March 3, 1993 in Atlanta, Georgia. 32 years old. He claimed to hold an MBA from Emory University. Aaron had verified he'd never attended. He'd used multiple names over the years. Derek Palmer, DJ Palmer, and in Seattle during his time with Andrea Nichols he'd gone by Derek Paulson. The bankruptcy filing from 2021 listed $890,000 in debt. A failed real estate limited liability company. Unpaid creditors. Personal credit cards maxed out. His gambling debts totaled $265,000, spread across 3 casinos, Harrah's Cherokee in North Carolina, the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and Beau Rivage in Biloxi, Mississippi. Collection agencies had filed liens against him in all 3 states. His Georgia real estate license had been suspended in 2022 for fraudulent misrepresentation and failure to disclose conflicts of interest. He'd registered 4 separate LLCs between 2018 and 2022. All of them had been dissolved. All of them had left unpaid debts. And then there were the restraining orders. The first was Andrea Nichols from Seattle. I'd already seen that one. Derek had defrauded her of $80,000, then vanished. The second was new. Vanessa Dalton, Charleston, South Carolina, filed in 2021. According to the petition, Vanessa was a 30-year-old interior designer. She'd met Derek in 2020 at a networking event for local business owners. He'd introduced himself as a real estate developer with projects across the Southeast. They dated for 8 months. He'd proposed. She'd said yes. Then Derek had asked her to invest $45,000 in a condominium development project in Mount Pleasant. A sure thing, he'd said. High returns, low risk. The project didn't exist. When Vanessa had started asking questions, Derek had deflected, delayed. And then one day, she'd discovered that a diamond bracelet her grandmother had given her, a family heirloom worth $9,500, was missing. Derek had pawned it. She'd filed a restraining order. The bracelet had been recovered, but Derek had never been criminally prosecuted. Vanessa hadn't pressed charges. She'd wanted to move on quietly, protect her business reputation. Aaron had interviewed her. He'd included her contact information in the report, along with a note subject willing to cooperate, willing to provide testimony if needed. And at the end of the section on Vanessa Dalton, Aaron had attached a sworn statement she'd written. I read it twice. Derek Palmer isolated me from my family. He made me distrust my own judgment. He systematically drained my savings, and when I discovered the truth, he disappeared. I filed a restraining order to protect myself. If Sarah Harrison is engaged to this man, she is in danger. I am willing to speak with her father, provide documentation, and testify if necessary. I set the report down. Martin was watching me. This is it, Will. This is the proof. Derek's not just a con artist. He's a serial predator. Andrea in Seattle, Vanessa here in Charleston, now Sarah. One of 3 women, I said quietly. 3 victims, same pattern every time. Isolation, manipulation, financial exploitation. And Sarah's next. Martin leaned forward. We need to move fast. The wedding's in 4 weeks. I picked up Vanessa's statement and read it again. If Sarah is engaged to this man, she is in danger. I thought about Sarah, the Sunday dinners that had stopped, the award ceremony she'd missed, the 30-minute Christmas visit, the way she'd deferred to Derek at every turn, the way she'd apologized for things that didn't need apologies. She was already isolated, already doubting herself. The financial exploitation had already started. Derek had tried to forge her signature for $425,000. Vanessa Dalton had been in Sarah's exact position 3 years ago, and she'd barely escaped. I pulled out my phone and looked at Martin. Set up a meeting with Vanessa Dalton. I want to hear her story firsthand. Martin hesitated. Will, are you sure this is getting heavy? Once you talk to her, once you hear what Derek did, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Martin nodded. He picked up his phone and started dialing. I sat back in my chair, staring at the 47-page report. Derek had done this before. To Andrea. To Vanessa. He was doing it now to Sarah. And if I didn't stop him, he'd do it again. To someone else's daughter, someone else's sister, someone else's friend. This wasn't just about protecting Sarah anymore. It was about stopping a predator. Derek had done this before. He'd do it again, unless I stopped him. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks before the wedding. Sarah's voice sounded tentative, almost fragile. Are you free for lunch tomorrow? I'd really like to talk. For the first time in months, hope flickered in my chest. Maybe the distance between us wasn't insurmountable. Maybe my daughter still existed somewhere beneath Derek's influence. Of course, sweetheart, anywhere you want. How about 39 Rue de Jean, 1 o'clock? I arrived 15 minutes early, which gave me time to study the restaurant. 39 Rue de Jean sat on John Street in the Upper King area, a bustling French bistro with sidewalk tables and floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, the lunch crowd filled every table: lawyers from nearby firms, tourists with shopping bags, couples sharing mussels and crusty bread. Sarah and Derek were already seated at a corner table visible to half the dining room. That should have been my first warning. Sarah stood, gave me a brief hug that felt choreographed. She wore a pale blue dress I'd never seen before, and her engagement ring caught the light as she gestured toward the empty chair. Thanks for coming. Derek rose, extended his hand with that practiced smile. Mr. Harrison, good to see you. I shook his hand because refusing would have made me look petty. His grip was firm, confident. The grip of someone who believed he'd already won. We ordered steak frites for me, niçoise salad for Sarah, duck confit for Derek. The waiter brought bread, and for a few minutes we made small talk about the weather, the restaurant, nothing that mattered. Then Derek leaned forward, his expression shifting to something that looked like concern. Just William, he said, using my first name with false intimacy. Sarah and I wanted to talk to you because we're worried. I set down my water glass. Worried about what? About you, Dad? Sarah's voice was soft, almost pitying. We've noticed some things lately. Forgetfulness. Mood swings. My jaw tightened. I'm 68 years old, Sarah. I'm not forgetful. The Google reviews for your firm, Derek continued smoothly. Several clients have mentioned concerns about missed deadlines, confusion during meetings, and that complaint to the architectural board. That complaint was false. My voice rose slightly. A woman at the next table glanced over. It was an anonymous attack with no merit. So, of course, you'd see it that way. Derek's tone remained gentle, reasonable. But from the outside, it looks like a pattern. The reviews, the complaint, your behavior at our engagement dinner, my behavior, I could feel heat climbing my neck. You're the one who refused my financial help, who dismissed every attempt I made to be part of your lives. See, this is what we're talking about. Derek looked at Sarah, then back at me. This anger, this paranoia. Sarah told me you even hired a private investigator to dig into my background. The trap snapped shut. Every eye in our corner of the restaurant was now turned toward us. I could see it in their faces, the older man, with the raised voice, the young couple trying to calm him down. To them, I looked exactly like what Derek was painting, an unstable father who couldn't accept his daughter's independence. I hired an investigator. I said, fighting to keep my voice level, because you forged my daughter's signature on a mortgage application. Because you're bankrupt. Because you have a restraining order from a woman in Seattle you defrauded of $80,000. Sarah's face went pale. Dad, stop. There's another victim right here in Charleston, Vanessa Dalton. You stole $45,000 from her and pawned her grandmother's diamond bracelet. This is exactly what the doctor warned us about. Derek's voice was so calm, so patient. He placed his hand over Sarah's on the table. Elaborate delusions, false accusations. It's textbook. What doctor? I stared at my daughter. Sarah listened to me. I can't do this. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I can't keep letting you hurt me like this. She rushed toward the door. I threw my napkin on the table and followed, aware of dozens of eyes tracking my movement, of whispered conversations erupting behind me. Outside on the sidewalk, John Street was busy with midday traffic. Sarah stood near the corner, arms wrapped around herself. Sarah, please. I reached for her arm, and she flinched. The flinch cut deeper than any words could. Everything I said in there is true. I have documentation, police reports, sworn statements from 2 women. Derek victimized exactly the way he's victimizing you. You hired a private investigator. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steel. You've been spying on my fiancé, digging up lies to try to ruin my wedding. They're not lies. Vanessa Dalton is willing to testify. Andrea Nichols in Seattle filed a restraining order. Derek Palmer Jr. filed for bankruptcy in Georgia in 2021 for $890,000. Stop. She held up both hands. Just stop. Do you hear yourself? Do you hear how crazy this sounds? And Sarah, I'm your father. I've spent 29 years protecting you. The only person I need protection from right now is you. Her voice broke, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. The only person hurting me right now is you, Dad. The words hung in the humid Charleston air between us. Derek appeared in the restaurant doorway, paid the bill visible in his hand, concern etched across his features. He walked over and gently placed his arm around Sarah's shoulders. Come on, sweetheart, he murmured. Let's go home. She let him lead her away. Didn't look back. I stood on that sidewalk for a long time, watching tourists stream past, watching life continue as if my world hadn't just collapsed. Through the restaurant window, I could see our table being cleared, the other diners returning to their meals and conversations. Derek had orchestrated this perfectly. He'd chosen a public venue, baited me into anger, and positioned himself as the concerned son-in-law trying to help a deteriorating old man. And now, in the eyes of everyone who mattered, including my daughter, I wasn't a father trying to save his child. I was a paranoid old man who couldn't accept that his daughter had grown up and moved on. The trap had closed, and I was the only one who could see the bars. 3 days before the wedding, my daughter called to uninvite me. I was in my study at 142 Trad Street when the phone rang Thursday evening. The last amber light filtered through the live oak outside, stretching long shadows across the floor. November in Charleston meant cooler air, open windows, the faint hum of cicadas without the weight of summer heat. "Dad." Sarah's voice sounded rehearsed. "Do you have a minute?" "Always." I set down the architectural journal I hadn't been reading. "How are the wedding preparations?" A pause. "That's actually why I'm calling. Derek and I talked, and we don't think it's a good idea for you to come to the wedding." The words hit exactly where I'd feared they would. "Sarah, please just listen." Her tone was controlled. "Your behavior these past months has been concerning. The accusations at lunch, hiring a private investigator, the things you've said about Derek. We're worried about your mental state." "My mental state is fine. Everything I told you was true." "That's exactly it," she said. "These delusions, these conspiracy theories. We can't have you there if you're going to cause a scene." I closed my eyes. Derek's language delivered in my daughter's voice. "Is this what you want?" I asked quietly. "Or what Derek wants? This is what's best for everyone. For me, for Derek, for you. We think you need professional help. And until you get it, I raised you for 29 years, I said, my voice breaking despite myself. After your mother died, I gave you everything. I kept every promise I made to her. I've never let you down. I know you believe that," she said softly. The gentleness hurt more than anger. "I know you think you're protecting me, but you're pushing me away. You're making me choose between my father and my future husband and I." She inhaled. "I choose Derek." "Sarah, please." "I love you, Dad, but you can't come. I'm sorry." The line went dead. I sat in the dimming room phone still against my ear. Outside, a car passed. A dog barked down the block. The world kept moving indifferent to the fact that mine had just fractured again. Eventually I stood. The velvet box waited on the entry table. I opened it beneath the lamp. Maggie's watch gleamed against cream silk. I could still see it on her wrist, the last morning, November 14th, 2008, when she tied Sarah's shoes and laughed at something our 12-year-old said. 6 hours later, she was gone. "Promise me you'll take care of her," Maggie had whispered in the ICU, her hand already cooling in mine. "Give her everything." What would she want me to do? The answer was immediate fight. I had built my life around it, the way I built buildings, carefully, deliberately, love as foundation. But Derek Palmer had dismantled it. Not with force, but with whispers. Doubt. Isolation. He had convinced my daughter that I was unstable. He had stolen her trust, the way he stole from Vanessa Dalton, from Andrea Nichols, from others I was still uncovering. And Sarah couldn't see it. She was walking toward him willingly, ready to bind her life to a predator. I looked at Maggie's photograph on the mantel our wedding day in 1988, young and certain. What would she want me to do? The answer was immediate. Fight. I dialed Martin Caldwell. "William," he answered quickly. "Everything all right?" "They uninvited me. Sarah just called." A pause. "I'm sorry. I'm going anyway." "William, that's not wise. If you show up uninvited, they could remove you. It could be trespassing." "I won't cause a scene," I said. "But I won't let her marry him without one last fight. I have a plan." "What plan?" "Trust me. I've spent 40 years designing structures that last. I know how to be strategic." "William, be ready Saturday afternoon. Keep your phone on." I ended the call before he could argue further. For a long moment, I stood in the quiet house where I had raised Sarah, where Maggie's presence still lived in every room. Grief hardened into clarity. Derek thought he had won. He had isolated my daughter, damaged my reputation, erased me from the most important day of her life. He had built a narrative where I was the threat, but he had underestimated something fundamental: a father. I went to my study and began assembling what I would need: Aaron Briggs's 47-page investigative report, Vanessa Dalton's sworn statement, Andrea Nichols's restraining order, the forged loan application with the mismatched signature. I pulled my navy suit from the closet, the same one I had worn when I'd first been turned away at the venue. I placed the velvet box beside it. Outside, Charleston settled into evening. Lights flickered on along Trad Street. The city that had watched me build a career, bury my wife, raise a daughter, and now prepare for one final confrontation. I had been erased from my daughter's wedding, so I did the only thing left to do. I crashed it. 4 days after the wedding, Derek Palmer tried to bury me. I'd spent those days in a strange limbo. After security escorted me from Magnolia Plantation, after Derek's cold dismissal, after I'd glimpsed Sarah in her white dress, after I'd driven home with Maggie's Rolex still in its box, I'd returned to 142 Trad Street and waited. 4 days of silence. No call from Sarah, no text, nothing. Martin and I had agreed to hold our evidence in reserve, waiting for the right moment. We had everything ready. Aaron Briggs's 47-page report, Vanessa Dalton's sworn statement, Andrea Nichols's restraining order, the forged loan application, with its mismatched signature. Then Wednesday morning, November 19th, my phone rang at 9:45. "William," Martin's voice was tight. "You need to see this. I'm sending you a link." The Facebook post loaded slowly on my laptop screen, and with each line that appeared, my chest tightened. Derek Palmer, November 19th, 2025 at 7:03 a.m. I need to share something difficult about my father-in-law, William Harrison. Sarah and I just returned from our honeymoon, and I've been wrestling with whether to post this publicly. But after what happened at our wedding, and given the ongoing harassment, I feel I owe it to our friends and family to be transparent. William has been struggling with what we believe are serious mental health issues. Over the past 6 months, his behavior has become increasingly erratic and concerning. He's made wild accusations about my background, claiming I'm bankrupt, that I've defrauded people, that I forged Sarah's signature on financial documents. None of this is true. He hired a private investigator to follow me. He ambushed me at a coffee shop with a folder of what he called evidence printouts from the internet conspiracy theories, completely fabricated claims. Last Saturday, despite being asked not to attend our wedding for everyone's safety, he showed up anyway. He was escorted from the premises by security after frightening several guests with his agitation. I'm sharing this screenshot of just a portion of his call history to me over the past 2 weeks. This is harassment. Below the text was an image, a phone screenshot, showing a call log. My name appeared 17 times, all marked as missed calls, spanning from November 1st through the morning of the wedding. 17 calls. I stared at that number. I'd called Derek exactly 3 times in the past 6 months, once after discovering the forged loan, once to arrange our confrontation at Collective Coffee, and once the day before the wedding to make a final plea. 3 calls, not 17. The post continued. Sarah is heartbroken. She loves her father, but she's also terrified of him. We've consulted with a therapist who specializes in elder mental health issues, and we're exploring options for getting William the help he needs. If you're reading this, please don't attack or shame William. He's not well. What he needs is compassion and professional intervention. But I also need to protect my wife, and I can't let these false accusations continue to damage our reputation and our peace. Thank you for your support during this difficult time. Below the post, 22,147 shares. 8,502 comments. I scrolled through the comments, each one a small knife. Poor Sarah, imagine your own father ruining your wedding day. This man is clearly mentally ill. Someone needs to call Adult Protective Services. Narcissistic parents can't handle their kids growing up. My dad pulled the same thing at my wedding. Derek, you're handling this with so much grace. Praying for your family. I hope he gets the help he needs before he hurts someone. This is elder abuse in reverse, when the elderly parent becomes the abuser. A few voices pushed back. Something about this feels off. Why post this publicly instead of handling it privately? I know William Harrison. He's a respected architect. This doesn't sound like him. But those comments were buried under thousands of others, drowned in a tide of sympathy for Derek and pity or contempt for me. I sat back in my chair, the laptop screen blurring. Derek had done it. He'd weaponized social media with surgical precision, transforming himself into the concerned son-in-law and me into the deranged father. The fake call log was genius, specific enough to seem credible, excessive enough to paint me as obsessive, and 22,000 people had shared his lie. My phone rang. Martin again. "You saw it," he said. "I saw it. You know that call log is fabricated. You've called him 3 times. I can pull your phone records right now and prove it." "I know." "William, if we don't respond to this, it becomes the truth. By tomorrow, every person in Charleston will believe you're mentally unstable. This will follow you for the rest of your life." I closed my eyes. Through my study window, I could see Trad Street, the historic homes, the palmetto trees, the city I'd built a life in. How many of my neighbors had already seen Derek's post? How many former clients, colleagues, friends? "What do you recommend?" I asked quietly. "We release everything, tonight. A detailed response post with every piece of evidence. Aaron's full report. Vanessa's sworn statement, Andrea's restraining order, the forged loan documents, your actual call records. An expert analysis of that fake screenshot. We tag the Charleston Post and Courier local news stations. We make this impossible to ignore. If I do, that Sarah will see it. She'll see me publicly accusing her husband of fraud, bankruptcy, harassment of other women. She already believes Derek's version, William. He's made sure of that. At least this way the truth is on the record. At least this way, when she's ready to see it, if she's ever ready, the evidence will be there." I thought of Sarah's voice on the phone 4 days ago. I choose Derek. I thought of Maggie's Rolex still in its velvet box on my desk. I thought of Vanessa Dalton, who'd lost $45,000 and her grandmother's bracelet. Of Andrea Nichols in Seattle, who'd filed a restraining order after Derek drained her savings. Of how many others there might be, women who'd never come forward, who'd been too ashamed or too defeated to fight back. Derek had spent months constructing a narrative in which I was the villain. He'd isolated my daughter, destroyed my reputation, and now with one viral post, he'd convinced thousands of strangers that I was dangerous. But he'd made a critical mistake. He'd fabricated evidence, and fabricated evidence could be disproven. "Draft the post," I told Martin. "Include everything. The bankruptcy filing, the restraining orders, the forged signature analysis, the real call logs. Make it detailed. Make it undeniable." "You're sure?" I looked at Derek's post on my screen, at his carefully crafted lies, at the 22,000 people who'd believed him. "I didn't want to do this publicly," I said. "I wanted to handle this privately to protect Sarah from the fallout. But Derek took that choice away from me." I opened the folder on my desk, the 47-page report, the sworn statements, the documentation I'd spent months gathering. Derek threw the first punch. I said, my voice steadier now. "Now it's my turn." I hit post at 7:43 p.m. on Wednesday night, and then I sat back in my chair and waited for the world to respond. Martin stood beside me in my study at 142 Trad Street, his hand resting on the back of my chair as we both stared at the screen. The post was simple, no theatrics, no emotional appeals, just a straightforward statement followed by a link. "I'm William Harrison, father of Sarah Harrison Palmer. Yesterday, my son-in-law, Derek Palmer, posted a statement about me that contained multiple fabrications. I didn't want to address this publicly, but I believe transparency is the only path forward. Below is a link to a Google Drive folder containing documented evidence. I encourage everyone to review it and draw your own conclusions." The Google Drive link led to 6 organized folders containing Derek Palmer Jr.'s bankruptcy filing from 2021 showing $890,000 in discharged debt, 2 restraining orders from Andrea Nichols in Seattle and Vanessa Dalton in Charleston detailing fraud totaling $125,000, the forged home equity loan application on Sarah's apartment, with certified handwriting analysis proving the signature mismatch. My actual phone records showing only 3 calls to Derek versus his fabricated 17 forensic analysis of his fake screenshot with pixel-level evidence of digital manipulation, and a redacted version of Aaron Briggs's 47-page investigative report documenting Derek's pattern of targeting women, isolating them, and systematically draining their finances. At the bottom of my post, I'd written, "I didn't want this to be public. I wanted to protect my daughter from this pain. But Derek Palmer left me no choice when he weaponized social media to destroy my reputation. These women deserve to be heard. My daughter deserves to know the truth about the man she married." The documentation speaks for itself. Within 15 minutes, the post had 200 shares. Within an hour, 3,500. My phone started ringing at 8:30 and didn't stop. Former clients, colleagues, neighbors, all wanting to know if they could help, if Sarah was safe. Martin fielded calls from 3 different reporters before midnight. I turned off my phone at 1 a.m. and tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's fake call log, saw the 22,000 people who'd believed his lies, and wondered if Sarah was reading my evidence right now, if any of it would penetrate the wall he'd built around her mind. When I woke Thursday morning, November 20th, and checked my laptop, my post had been shared 35,000 times, nearly 13,000 more than Derek's original attack. The comment section had transformed overnight. "I knew something was off about that first post," someone wrote. "Those bankruptcy documents don't lie. $890,000. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern." A woman had written, "My father tried to warn me about my ex-husband too, and I didn't listen. I hope Sarah sees this before it's too late." Several people apologized directly. "Mr. Harrison, I shared Derek's post yesterday. I'm sorry I didn't wait to hear your side." There were still defenders of Derek's scattered voices insisting that documents could be fabricated, but they were drowned out by people who'd actually opened the Google Drive and read the restraining orders and seen the forensic analysis of the fake screenshot. The Charleston Post and Courier had published a story. Local architect releases extensive evidence against son-in-law following viral dispute. 2 local news stations sent interview requests, which I declined through Martin. I didn't want to be the face of this story. I wanted the evidence to speak for itself. By mid-morning, a Reddit thread had dissected every document with users claiming expertise in bankruptcy law and forensic photography, weighing in to confirm authenticity. A Twitter hashtag started trending in Charleston, #truth about Derek Palmer. Derek's response came at 10:15 a.m. His original viral post had been deleted. I'd taken screenshots the night before, and so had thousands of others, and in its place he'd posted a brief defensive statement. The documents being circulated are taken out of context and represent a coordinated attack on my character. I'm consulting with my attorney and will have a full response soon. The comments on his new post were brutal. "What context makes bankruptcy fraud okay?" someone asked. "Delete this too, coward," another wrote. He was being ratioed in real time, his carefully constructed image crumbling with every refresh. By noon, Vincent Hughes called to say that Derek's employer, a mid-sized real estate firm in Charleston, had placed him on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. 2 clients had already pulled their contracts. The architecture board complaint against me, orchestrated by Derek with anonymous accusations, had been formally withdrawn after the chairman reviewed my evidence and called to apologize personally. I sat in my study watching the dominoes fall, and I felt no triumph. Only a bone-deep exhaustion and a gnawing worry about Sarah. She hadn't called, hadn't texted. In all the thousands of comments, I hadn't seen a single word from her. Was she reading this? Did she believe it? Or had Derek convinced her that I'd somehow fabricated 800 pages of court documents and forensic analysis? Then, at 2:30 Thursday afternoon, a new post appeared that changed everything. Vanessa Dalton had decided to speak. Her post began with a professional headshot and an introduction. "My name is Vanessa Dalton. I'm a 34-year-old interior designer here in Charleston, South Carolina. In the spring of 2021, I met Derek Palmer at a gallery opening downtown. He was charming, attentive, successful. Within 6 months, I'd given him $45,000 for a condo development opportunity that never existed. My grandmother's diamond bracelet, a family heirloom worth $9,500, was pawned without my knowledge. When I confronted him, he told me I was remembering things wrong, that I was being paranoid and irrational. He isolated me from my family, monitored my phone, made me feel like I was losing my mind. It took me months to recognize what was happening, and when I finally obtained a restraining order, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was uniquely foolish. Now I know I wasn't. William Harrison's daughter Sarah is in the same position I was in. I don't know if she'll listen, but I had to speak up. If you're reading this, Sarah, please know it's not your fault, and you're not alone." Vanessa had attached a photograph of her restraining order with Derek's name clearly visible. Within 3 hours, her post had 12,000 shares. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, hundreds, thanking her for her courage, sharing their own stories, and directly addressing Sarah. "Sarah, if you're reading this, please listen to these women. Please listen to your father." Someone created a hashtag Believe Vanessa. At 4 p.m., I received a message from Andrea Nichols in Seattle. "Mr. Harrison, I've been following this story. If you need me to testify, to speak publicly, to help your daughter in any way, I will. Derek Palmer destroyed 2 years of my life. I won't let him do the same to Sarah if I can help it." Martin called at 5. "We've shifted the narrative. Public opinion is on your side now. But Derek will fight back. Men like him don't go down quietly. This isn't over, William." I looked out my study window at Trad Street, at the lengthening shadows of a November afternoon, at the city where I'd built a career and raised a daughter, and now fought to save her from a predator she'd married. The truth had spread like wildfire through Charleston and beyond, validated by documents and testimony, and the courage of women who'd survived what Sarah was living through now. But Sarah herself remained silent, and Derek remained in her life, in her home, whispering his counter-narrative into her ear. The truth had spread. But the final confrontation was still to come. Before I reveal what happened next in this family story, the moment everything exploded, type "justice" in the comments if you're still with me. I need to know you're ready. And a quick reminder, while some details in this dad's revenge story have been fictionalized for storytelling purposes, the core lessons about protecting your family remain deeply important and valuable. Now let's see what Derek did when the truth finally came crashing down. Friday evening at 7 p.m. Derek Palmer went live on Facebook to save his reputation. By 7:30, he'd destroyed it completely. I was in my study at 142 Trad Street when Martin called. "William, Derek just started a live stream, setting the record straight, the truth about recent allegations. He's got 200 viewers already and climbing fast." I pulled up Facebook on my laptop. There was Derek sitting in what looked like Sarah's apartment on Wentworth Street, a bookshelf carefully arranged behind him, his expression somewhere between confident and desperate. He wore a button-down shirt, his hair combed, his setting staged to project credibility. "I want to address the accusations that have been made against me over the past few days." He began, his voice steady, but his eyes darting off camera, probably reading comments. "I've been the victim of a coordinated attack by my father-in-law, who has used his resources to fabricate documents and manipulate the narrative. The bankruptcy was a legitimate business failure, not fraud. The restraining orders were misunderstandings blown out of proportion. And the idea that I would forge my wife's signature is absurd." The viewer count climbed 500, then 1,000, then 1,500. Comments flooded the screen. Some supportive, "We believe you." "Derek, don't let them tear you down. but increasingly skeptical. Then explain the documents, someone wrote. Where's your proof? Another asked. Martin's voice was urgent beside me. This is your chance, William. He's put himself in a public forum. You can request to join as a guest speaker. My hand hovered over the keyboard. Then I clicked Request to Join. Derek's eyes went wide as the notification appeared on his screen. For a moment he froze, then forced a smile. Well, it looks like William Harrison wants to join the conversation. I'm not sure that's... The comments exploded. Let him speak. If you're innocent, let him join. What are you afraid of? Derek's jaw tightened. Fine. Let's have this conversation. The screen split. My face appeared in a box beside Derek's, and suddenly I was looking at my son-in-law across the digital divide, while 5,000 people, the count was spiking, rapidly watched. To Derek, I said, keeping my voice level. You said the documents are taken out of context. Let's walk through them together so everyone can see the full picture. I shared my screen. The first document appeared, Derek Palmer Jr.'s bankruptcy filing from 2021, the $890,000 debt, highlighted in yellow, 4 failed limited liability companies listed, dates clearly visible. This shows a pattern of financial failure across multiple ventures, I said. Can you explain the context that makes this acceptable? Derek shifted in his chair. That was a business failure, William. Businesses fail all the time. It's not fraud. Fair enough, I said. Then let's talk about Andrea Nichols. I switched documents. Andrea's restraining order filled the screen, Derek's name prominent, the Seattle court seal visible. Andrea lost $80,000 when you convinced her to invest in a property development that never existed. She filed this restraining order in March 2021. Is that also a business failure? That was a misunderstanding. She misinterpreted, and Vanessa Dalton. I switched screens again. She lost $45,000 and her grandmother's diamond bracelet. Same misunderstanding. The viewer count hit 12,000. Derek was sweating now, his carefully constructed composure cracking. You're twisting everything. You hired a private investigator to stalk me, to dig up anything you could. I hired an investigator because you forged my daughter's signature on a $400,000 to $25,000 loan application. I shared the handwriting analysis, the signature comparison stark and damning. Can you explain that context? Derek opened his mouth, closed it, his face reddening. The comments were a waterfall now, overwhelmingly against him. He's lying in real time, someone wrote. Look at his face, that's guilt. Then, at 7:22, a third video box appeared on the screen. Vanessa Dalton. Derek's face went pale. No, this isn't fair. You can't, Hello, Derek. Vanessa said, her voice calm and strong. It's been 4 years. The viewer count surged to 18,000, then 22,000. I'm Vanessa Dalton, she said, looking directly into her camera. In 2021, Derek Palmer defrauded me of $45,000. He told me it was for a condo development in Mount Pleasant that would triple my investment. That development never existed. She shared her screen. A bank transfer receipt appeared, $45,000, Derek's name in the recipient field, his signature at the bottom. He pawned my grandmother's diamond bracelet, a family heirloom worth $9,500 without my permission or knowledge. I have the pawn shop receipt. Another document, a receipt from a Charleston pawn shop, dated June 2021, 18-carat diamond bracelet, listed Derek Palmer's signature and driver's license number recorded. He isolated me from my family, Vanessa continued. He monitored my phone. He told me I was crazy when I questioned him, that I was remembering things wrong, that I was paranoid. It took me 8 months to escape, and another year to rebuild my life. She paused, then looked directly into the camera. Sarah, if you're watching this, and I know you are, this is what he does. He makes you doubt yourself. He makes you feel alone. But you're not alone. Your father loves you. We all want to help you. The viewer count hit 26,000. The comments were unanimous now. Vanessa, you are so brave. Sarah, please listen to these women. Derek is finished. Derek was shaking his head, hands raised as if to physically block the words. This is an ambush. This is coordinated. You people are ganging up on me. If we're telling the truth, I said quietly. That's not an ambush, Derek. That's accountability. At 7:28, Derek snapped. You don't know what it's like, he shouted into the camera, his voice cracking. You don't know the pressure. William turned my own wife against me. He hired investigators to follow me. He spent months trying to destroy my marriage. Sarah chose you, Derek. I said, my voice still calm. I never turned her against you. You did that yourself with lies. Shut up. Derek's face was red, now veins visible in his neck. You're a bitter old man who can't let go of his daughter, who can't accept that she has her own life. Derek. Vanessa said, her voice cutting through his rage. You're proving everything we've said about you. You can't handle being challenged. You can't take responsibility. Derek's hand shot toward his phone, his voice breaking. Sarah, don't listen to them. Sarah, I love you. Sarah. The viewer count peaked at 29,000. Then the screen went black. Live ended. The comments erupted in the void. He ran. Coward. Someone screen recorded this right. Sending this to the news. But my feed was still live. My camera was still on. For a moment, I just sat there staring into the lens, aware that thousands of people were still watching, waiting to see what I would do. I leaned forward and spoke directly to the camera. Sarah, if you're watching this, and I hope you are, I want you to know that I love you. I have always loved you. Everything I've done to protect you. And I'm here whenever you're ready. My door is always open. I will always be waiting for you. I paused, then switched to the language of my childhood, the language Maggie and I had sometimes used with Sarah when she was small, the language of intimacy and home. Sarah, I'm always here. I'm always waiting for you. I ended the stream. For 2.5 hours after the live stream ended, I sat in my study and waited for the phone to ring. It didn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Sarah watching it, watching Derek unravel on camera, watching Vanessa describe the same manipulation Sarah had lived through, watching me lay out document after document proving he had lied about everything. Had she seen it? Had something finally broken through? At 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My heart pounded as I looked through the glass. Sarah stood on the porch with a suitcase at her side, eyes red and swollen. When she saw me, her face crumpled. Dad, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I opened the door, and she collapsed into my arms. She was shaking, sobbing too hard to speak. I held her the way I had when she was small, one hand on her back, the other cradling her head. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to fix in that moment. My daughter had come home. After a long while, she pulled back. I'm so sorry, she whispered. You're home, I said. That's all that matters. I watched the live stream. I saw Vanessa. I saw his face when you showed the documents. I saw him lose control, and I realized her voice broke. Come inside, I said softly. You don't have to explain, not tonight. In the kitchen, I made tea the way Maggie used to. We sat at the table where we'd shared 1,000 meals. He told me you were lying, Sarah said, staring at her hands. He made me believe you fabricated everything. I chose him over you. He's very good at what he does, I said. You're not the first person he fooled. And it wasn't your fault. I should have trusted you. You loved him. Love makes us vulnerable. I reached for her hand. I'm just grateful you're safe. She looked at me through tears. How did you keep fighting when I pushed you away? I thought of Maggie, of the promise I made in the ICU 17 years ago, of the velvet box upstairs holding her Rolex, of every day I'd built a life for the little girl who lost her mother too soon. Because you're my daughter, I said. I would fight through fire for you, always. That night, I showed her to her old bedroom. I had never changed it, the same blue walls, the same desk, the same bookshelf. It's exactly the same, she said, tears returning. I always knew you'd come home. After she closed the door, I stood in the hallway and cried for the first time since this nightmare began. Not from grief, but from relief. Saturday morning, I woke to the sound of pans in the kitchen. Sarah stood at the stove. Shrimp and grits, she said with a tentative smile. Mama's recipe? I know it's Saturday, but I wanted to. It's perfect, I said. She wore an old College of Charleston sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She looked younger somehow, like the weight of Derek's control had begun to lift. Over breakfast sunlight pouring through the window, she said I called a lawyer. Martin gave me a referral. We can pursue an annulment because of fraud. It should move quickly. Whatever you need, I said. I'm here. I know. She met my eyes. I'm sorry it took me so long. You're here now. She nodded. I need to start over. He took my savings, my trust, my sense of self. You survived him, I said. That's strength. Later that morning, I retrieved the velvet box. When I opened it, Sarah whispered, Mama's watch. I was going to give it to you at the wedding. I've kept it since the day she died. It's yours now. Her hands trembled as she fastened it around her wrist. It fit perfectly. Tears streamed down her face. I'll never take it off. I pulled her into my arms. Between us, Maggie's watch ticked softly, steady, enduring. The consequences for Derek came quickly. Saturday afternoon, Martin called. Derek's real estate firm had terminated him for ethics violations. By evening, the landlord served an eviction notice. With the annulment underway, and Sarah the primary leaseholder, Derek had no right to remain. Sunday morning, Martin called again. The FBI is opening an investigation, he said. The forged loan qualifies as federal wire fraud. Combined with Vanessa's $45,000 and Andrea's $80,000 plus interstate fraud patterns, they're building a case. Federal charges. He could face years. I felt no triumph, only quiet relief. Sarah stood in the doorway. Is he going to jail? I don't know, I said honestly. But he can't hurt you anymore. She nodded and went back to the living room. That afternoon, we sat on the porch at 142 Trad Street. Neighbors walked dogs. Tourists lifted cameras. Spanish moss swayed in the November breeze. Sarah wore Maggie's Rolex and her old sweatshirt. We had survived the storm, the lies, the public battle, the viral fallout, the live stream confrontation, Derek's frantic attempts to discredit us. Sarah was home, safe, beginning to heal. The truth was public. Justice was moving forward. But I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Fighting had been simple, clear, strategic. Rebuilding would be different. Rebuilding trust after it's shattered. Rebuilding Sarah's sense of self after months of manipulation. Relearning how to be father and daughter without the shadow between us. We had survived the storm. Now came the harder work building again. The first Thursday in December, I drove Sarah to her first therapy appointment. Surdia, Dr. Rebecca's office sat on Broad Street in one of Charleston's historic buildings. A trauma specialist in her mid-40s with a calm, steady presence she'd been recommended by Martin's wife. Sarah's hand trembled on the door handle. What if I can't do this? Then we try again tomorrow, I said. But I think you're stronger than you know. I waited in the reception area staring at framed prints I couldn't focus on. 30 minutes later, Dr. Rebecca stepped out and invited me in. Sarah sat on the couch, tissues in her lap, but her shoulders were straighter than when she'd walked in. Sarah asked if you could join us, Dr. Rebecca said. We've been discussing what healing looks like and what she needs from you. She turned to Sarah. Can you tell your father what you told me? Sarah drew a shaky breath. I need patience. I'm not going to be okay right away. Some days I'll be angry at Derek, at myself, at you for being right. I need to know you won't give up on me." My throat tightened. "I'm here, for as long as it takes." "That's not conditional. That's permanent." Dr. Rebecca nodded. "What Derek did has a name: coercive control. Isolation, gaslighting, financial abuse, turning you against your father. These are calculated tactics. They are not your fault." Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks. "I thought I was weak. Stupid." "You survived," Dr. Rebecca said gently. "You recognized the truth and left. That's strength." Sarah committed to weekly sessions. I agreed to join once a month for family therapy. It was a small beginning, but it was real. 2 weeks later, we sat in Charleston family court for the annulment hearing. Sarah wore a simple black dress and Maggie's Rolex. I sat behind her as her attorney addressed the judge. "Your Honor, my client was defrauded into this marriage. Derek Palmer concealed bankruptcies totaling $890,000, 2 restraining orders from prior victims, and ongoing financial fraud. He forged her signature on a $425,000 loan." The judge reviewed the documents in silence. "Based on clear evidence of fraud and material misrepresentation, this marriage is declared void, ab initio void, from the beginning. Ms. Harrison, you are legally restored to your maiden name." Sarah exhaled as tears streamed down her face. "Not Palmer, Harrison." Outside the courthouse, she turned to me. "I feel like I can breathe again." December became a month of rebuilding. The first Sunday after the annulment, we cooked shrimp and grits together at 142 Trad Street. At exactly 1 o'clock, we sat at the kitchen table, just the two of us, like we had for years after Maggie died. "I'm applying for marketing positions," Sarah said. "New company, new projects, something that's mine." "You're talented," I told her. "They'll be lucky to have you." She smiled, really smiled, and something loosened in my chest. Mid-December, we visited Magnolia Cemetery. Sarah wore Maggie's Rolex and carried white roses. We walked beneath live oaks draped in Spanish moss to the simple headstone. "Margaret Maggie Harrison, 1960 to 2008. Beloved wife and mother." Sarah knelt, tracing her mother's name. I wish she could have warned me about Derek. I knelt beside her. "She would have loved you through it." We don't stop loving our children because they trust the wrong people. We love them through it. "I'm sorry it took me so long," she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't listen." We stayed there in the December wind. When we stood, she took my hand and held it all the way back to the car. As the weeks passed, Sarah shared what she was learning in therapy trauma, bonding intermittent reinforcement, the way Derek alternated affection with criticism to keep her off balance. "I was furious when you hired that investigator," she admitted one Sunday. "Derek told me it proved you were obsessed." "I was terrified," I said. "But I'd do it again. I'd do anything to protect you." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I know. I finally understand." Trust didn't return in grand gestures. It came back in shared meals, honest conversations, steady presence. Late December, Martin called. The plea deal went through. Derek pled guilty to federal wire fraud, interstate fraud, and identity theft. 4 years in federal prison, $890,000 in restitution. 3 years supervised release. 4 years meant he'd serve at least 85%, nearly 3.5 years. When I told Sarah, she was quiet. 4 years, she said. "Is that enough?" "I don't know. But it's accountability. And you're safe." She nodded. "I don't want revenge. I want to move forward." "Then that's what we'll do." On Christmas Eve, we decorated a tree in the living room. Sarah unpacked ornaments Maggie had collected over the years. She held up a small glass angel. "Mom bought this the year I was born," she said. She said every baby needed a guardian angel. She hung it carefully, adjusting it until it caught the light. A month earlier, she had arrived shattered. Now she was healing, not quickly, not easily, but honestly. I had spent 40 years designing buildings meant to endure storms. I thought I understood permanence. But rebuilding trust requires a different architecture. No steel beam can replace patience. No blueprint guarantees forgiveness. No shortcut substitutes consistency. It demands presence, humility, repetition. I had to learn how to build again, this time with patience and love. 3 days after Christmas, Sarah showed me a message that shifted everything. We were in my study at 142 Trad Street when she turned her laptop toward me. A Facebook message from a woman in North Carolina filled the screen. "Mr. Harrison, I watched your live stream. My daughter is in a relationship that sounds exactly like what you described. She won't listen to me. I don't know what to do. Please, any advice. I'm desperate." I looked at Sarah. "You've been getting messages like this. Dozens," she said. "People want to know how you knew, how you fought, how I got out. What do you want to tell them? The truth. All of it." She opened a document. "I've been thinking about writing a book. The Architecture of Deception. A father and daughter's fight against coercive control." The title struck me immediately, my profession woven into the reality of what Derek had built around her. "Alternating chapters," she said. "Your perspective, then mine. We start the day I introduced you to Derek and end with the live stream. Then a resource section, warning signs, how to support someone, how to leave safely." I thought of Maggie. She would have loved this, taking pain and turning it into service. "Then we make sure they don't feel alone," I said. "We start after New Year. Martin knows a literary agent." Sarah smiled, not just hopeful for herself, but for the families we might help. 2 days later, I stood before 40 parents at a community center in West Ashley, more nervous than I had been during the live stream. The facilitator introduced me. "William Harrison's daughter survived coercive control. He's here to share what he learned." I looked at the faces in front of me, mothers and fathers carrying the same exhaustion and fear I had carried for months. 6 months ago, I stood outside my daughter's wedding and was told I didn't belong there. Tonight, I'm here to tell you, you do belong in your child's life, even when they push you away. I outlined the warning signs: isolation from family, financial secrecy, monitoring devices, gaslighting, slowly turning a child against those who loved them. "Here's what not to do," I said. "Don't give ultimatums. They'll choose the abuser. Don't confront publicly without evidence. Don't cut off contact." A woman in the front row wiped her eyes. "Here's what to do. Document quietly. Consult professionals, a lawyer, investigator, therapist. Keep the door open. Say, 'I'm here when you're ready.' No judgment. And be patient." I shared the image that had carried me through the darkest nights. "You're not there to drag them out of the storm. You're the lighthouse. Steady, visible, constant. When they're ready, they'll find their way by your light." I told them about the Rolex, how I'd tried to give it to Sarah at the wedding and been turned away, how I'd given it to her again after she left Derek, and how she'd put it on through tears. "Timing matters," I said. "Love waits." During questions, a father asked quietly, "What if they never come back?" I remembered the nights I lay awake, convinced I had lost her. "Then you keep the light on anyway," I said. "Because hope is the last thing a parent gives up." Afterward, several parents approached me with specific stories. As I drove home, I realized something had shifted. The pain wasn't just something we survived, it was something we could use. The next afternoon, I drafted an announcement, the Maggie Harrison Youth Architecture Initiative. Sarah helped refine it, a free mentorship program for underserved Charleston teens. We would teach architecture basics, confidence, and college preparation. "We'll name it after your mother," I said. "She devoted her life to serving others." Sarah's eyes filled. She would have loved this. We structured it to meet twice a week after school. Students would design real projects, a playground, elements of a community center renovation. 8 students for spring 2026. Strong foundations. Attention to detail. Service, I wrote in the mission statement. Architecture teaches lessons for life. Sarah would lead outreach and social media, her voice amplifying the work. It felt like a three-generation legacy: Maggie's compassion, my craft, Sarah's communication. On New Year's Eve, we sat at the kitchen table reviewing book outlines and youth applications. The house felt alive again, purpose replacing silence. "We've built something good from all that pain," Sarah said. "Yes," I replied. "But there's one more place I need to go before the year ends." She met my eyes and understood immediately. Magnolia Plantation, the place where I had been told I didn't belong. The place where the storm had fully broken. We had turned suffering into service. But before the new year began, there was one final place I needed to stand. On New Year's Day, Sarah and I sat on the porch at 142 Trad Street, watching the first sunrise of 2026. The air was cool, touched with winter jasmine. Sarah wore one of Maggie's old sweaters and cradled a mug of coffee. On her left wrist, the rose-gold Rolex Datejust caught the pale light. "I applied to Clemson," she said quietly. "Master of Architecture." I looked at her. "Architecture. I want to design spaces that help people heal," she said. "Safe houses for domestic violence survivors. Shelters that feel like homes. Places that restore dignity." She met my eyes. "Derek showed me what it feels like to be trapped in an unsafe space. I want to build the opposite of that." My throat tightened. It was Maggie's heart for service blended with my craft, yet entirely Sarah's vision. "Your mother would be proud," I said. "So am I. She taught me to care about people. You taught me that buildings mean something, that they reflect how we value each other. And you taught me that love doesn't quit." She adjusted the Rolex absent-mindedly. "That watch has traveled a long road," I said. "Tell me from the beginning." So I did. I told her about buying it for Maggie on our 10th anniversary, about how she wore it every day for 18 years, about standing in the ICU holding her hand one last time, feeling the weight of the watch on her wrist, about keeping it in a velvet box for 17 years, waiting for the right moment. I told her about bringing it to Magnolia Plantation on her wedding day, ready to pass it on, only to be turned away. About bringing it home again, wondering if I'd ever have the chance. And about that Saturday morning after she left Derek, when I finally placed it in her hands, and she promised never to take it off. "It's not just a watch," I said. "It's proof that love endures, that some people are worth fighting for, that you never give up." Tears filled Sarah's eyes, but she smiled. "When I look at it, I think of Mom, and of you standing outside that wedding venue, still hoping I'd see the truth." She wiped her cheeks. "If I ever have a daughter, I'll pass it on, and I'll tell her love never gives up." We sat quietly as the sun climbed higher. "I want to visit Mom," she said. "Will you come?" We drove to Magnolia Cemetery, the path familiar now. Beneath ancient oaks draped in Spanish moss, Sarah carried white roses to the simple headstone. "Margaret Maggie Harrison, 1960 to 2008. Beloved wife and mother." Sarah knelt and placed the roses at the base, her fingers resting on her mother's name. I laid a hand on her shoulder. "She's home, Maggie," I said softly. "She's safe. She got away from him. She's building something beautiful." I kept my promise. I never stopped fighting for her. My voice broke. Sarah reached up and covered my hand. "Hi, Mom," she whispered. "I'm sorry I got lost. But Dad never gave up on me. I'm going back to school. I'm going to design places that help people escape what I went through. I'll make you proud." We stood there, memory, presence, and future woven together. As we walked back, sunlight filtered through the live oaks. Sarah slipped her arm through mine. I thought about the 6 months that nearly destroyed us. The fear, the live stream confrontation, the evidence, Derek's sentencing, the viral fallout, the book we were writing, the youth program we were building, the Sunday dinners we'd restored, shrimp and grits from Maggie's recipe, laughter returning to the kitchen. Trust rebuilt, one honest conversation at a time. I thought about what victory really meant. It wasn't Derek in prison, though justice mattered. It wasn't my reputation restored. It wasn't even the book or the speaking invitations. Victory was this Sarah beside me on a January morning, planning her future, wearing her mother's watch. Victory was her calling for advice, trusting me again. Victory was knowing that when everything collapsed, love held. Victory was the foundation that remained after the storm. At the car, she squeezed my arm. "Thank you, Dad, for never giving up." I looked at my daughter, scarred, strong, healing, and felt something steady settle inside me. Peace, perhaps, or the certainty that we would be all right. The Rolex flashed in the sunlight as she opened the door. We drove home to Sunday dinners, book chapters, youth applications, and the quiet beauty of a life rebuilt. As the cemetery faded behind us, I thought about what this journey had taught me. Love is architecture. It must be built deep enough to withstand storms. And when it is real, it never gives up. And to you listening to this family story, remember this. 3 times I wanted to give up when Sarah uninvited me, when she chose Derek, when I sat alone in the dark. 3 times I felt God whisper, "Keep the light on." And 3 times he gave me strength I didn't have. This dad revenge isn't about destroying an enemy. It's about saving your child through love that refuses to quit. Don't be like me and waiting too long to gather evidence. If you see warning signs, isolation, financial control, gaslighting, act immediately. Document quietly, consult professionals, build your case before the abuser knows. Love is patient, but love is also strategic. But do be like me in this never surrender hope. Your child may defend the person hurting them, may tell you you're wrong. Keep the light on anyway. Be the lighthouse. When they're ready, they'll find their way home. This family story taught me that real dad revenge isn't prison sentences or public humiliation. It's Sunday dinners, restored trust, rebuilt a daughter planning her future. That's the dad revenge worth fighting for, not destroying your enemy, but reclaiming your family. God honored my perseverance not because I was perfect, but because I refused to quit. If he can carry me through this storm, he can carry you through yours. So if this family story encouraged you, share it with someone who needs hope. Comment your own experience, you're not alone. Subscribe for more real conversations about faith, family, and resilience. Thank you for staying until the end. A quick note. Future stories may contain fictionalized elements for educational purposes. If that's not your preference, feel free to explore other content. But remember, this love never gives up. Never.